How we doing, everybody? How we doing? How we doing, everybody? How we...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the E3 sorry. Am I redlining? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the E3... Ugh. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the post-E3 Carriage Play podcast. This is your co-host, Joe.
And this is your co-host, Jacob. And we're going to kind of go through our top 5 takeaways from E3 2018. And we're a little bit late in recording this, but we thought we'd try to sell it. We try to sell it in a way of a looking back with a little bit of distance at E3 2018. Emotions have sort of died down. We're not quite as hot. These aren't going to be as hot a takes as you would have got right after E3. So expect a little bit more level-headed conversation.
I think we've had a chance to stew in it, just really everything to sink in.
We've rewatched a lot of the trailers, rewatched a lot of the press conferences, and we've sort of accepted it for what it is. And
for better or worse.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not that it's a bad E3 by any means.
No. I mean, I'm ambivalent. It's, we've seen better. I mean, we've seen better in the last handful of years, but I mean, where E3 was the most exciting thing you've ever seen. And this is feels a little holding pattern-y. Mm-hmm. Kind of feels like the generation is winding down and everybody's kind of secretly gearing up for next gen.
I mean, I sometimes try to think of things as colors, as a color to sort of describe this sort of just general sense of emotion of what I'm feeling about something. And I feel like this color kind of applies to 2018, but cobalt keeps coming to mind. Just this kind of steel blue, kind of a little bit dark, just kind of subdued. Not...
You need to change the visual when you edit this.
to some sort of darker blue color.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's just sort of been the overwhelming sense of 2018. I mean, even looking at the big games that have come out, like God of War, just God of War is so good, but it to me, it just when I think about it, just this kind of, it's just more relaxed, just a little bit.
It's subdued.
It's subdued. It's reserved.
It's sad and subdued, especially coming off of from that series, which is so bright and bombastic, orange.
Yeah,
orange or red.
Exactly.
And and that's it's cobalt, and not just God of War, but that seems to be the trend through the year.
Yeah,
and I see it too.
I think that kind of just even applies to E3. I mean, to get into our takeaways. One of our takeaways is that third parties carried game announcements at E3 this year. There weren't a lot of first party game announcements. And I think the things that people got really excited about were things like Sekiro from Software, Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, and others that I think... but for our interests, those were the big ones. Mm-hmm. The first parties, I don't want to say phoned it in necessarily, but it seemed tried and true. Everything seemed... you saw a new Halo, you saw a new Forza, you saw a new Gears, you saw... And for Sony first party, we knew all of those first party titles, and for Nintendo, they only really brought a very small selection of things that they probably should have shown more.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo, less than you expected. We all expected to see Metroid Prime 4. We expected to see Bayonetta 3. We expected to...
Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
The list goes on. It just occurs to me, what is Nintendo's excuse? Are they gearing up for new hardware? I can't imagine they're gearing up for new hardware.
I think when the Metroid Prime 4 thing was announced last year, it had to have been something like hey, look, we just got the email today. It's happening. We're gonna get a team going soon. Kind of.
Final Fantasy VII style
Yeah,
announcement.
apparently, yeah.
That worked really well. When they did it.
And I think it even worked well for Metroid Prime 4. You don't see a lot of people angry that Metroid Prime 4 isn't there. You see this sort of sentiment of, let it cook. We'll get it when we get it.
Man, I mean, if I put myself in the shoes of a Nintendo fan, I'm like, this would really bug me. I mean, I'm not a Metroid person. I mean, I have very limited exposure, but, that's a big deal for Nintendo fans.
Uh-huh. And I mean, if it's ready, it's ready, and if it's not, it's not, I guess. And maybe they made the right call, maybe they didn't.
But yeah.
Or another thing from Nintendo was the heavily rumored Star Fox racing game. I don't know if we've talked about that on this podcast, but
I think it was in our predictions, right?
I don't know.
Well,
let us know in the comments.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like what was it? Is it Retro?
Yeah.
Retro Studios, the guys, the folks that made like the Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze and
the original Metroid Prime trilogy.
It's like their next game is rumored to be this Star Fox kart racer kind of thing. Kart racers, maybe that's kind of dismissive. It's like a Star Fox racing game, in the vein of probably like Diddy Kong Racing or like that style, not necessarily just like Mario Kart.
Yeah.
But and then with like going to what Sony showed, I mean everything, all those games, those first party games, all 10 out of 10s for sure. But it wasn't. We didn't walk away thinking that wasn't the wow factor necessarily. We go to E3, we expect presence in the form of game announcements.
But there was wow factor, and the wow factor was the third parties.
Yeah.
It's Sony's show. It's like maybe not it's super jazzed about Resident Evil 2, but Resident Evil. I'm not a Resident Evil guy in general, but that was, I think, in my mind, the highlight of that show.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is the thing about Resident Evil 2 remake is not familiar with the original. That game, the remake trailers that they showed, makes me care. It looks absolutely perfect. Like, as somebody who's on the outside looking in, it's like, I don't know what more you could ever hope or dream for from a remake of this game. And,
the thing is, as somebody who, that's my introduction to the Resident Evil series was number 2 back in 1997. It's just, all the police station and what they were showing, it's like, oh, I know all of this by heart. Mm-hmm. It's they did it for my money perfectly. They took the kernel of the idea and they improved it in all the ways they needed to and just made it look spectacular.
Yeah, and I mean, to get into another Capcom game, Devil May Cry 5, we aren't Devil May Cry 5 fans, and we did talk...
Devil May Cry fans.
Oh, yeah. What did I say?
You said Devil May Cry 5 fans.
Oh, we aren't Devil May Cry fans. But 5, really sold me. The energy of that trailer, the energy of the song, the companionship between, is it Nero is the main character,
and
then his partner, who's that gal who's like Velma from Scooby-Doo,
and they're in the mystery machine.
Yeah, and they're just and
it's so dorky, but in the right kind of dorky.
I've never got Devil May Cry. We went back and watched the cutscenes from some of the old games, and it's wow, I don't get it. I didn't feel like it was for me in those old games. I just didn't get the cheese of it or the appeal that people liked. But seeing Devil May Cry 5, it finally clicked in my mind of, oh, this is just fun. This is bombastic. This is silly. This is, and having that companion character who's that one woman, she's sort of, I think she sort of sold me on the game of this character who's more grounded, who's looking at it as everything is just awesome. There's a scene in the trailer where she's next to some dying soldier and she's pointing at Nero. I was going, yeah, this is awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, just jazzed by all this crazy shit that's happening. And like that's an interesting take because everything I've seen of those games before is that everybody's too cool to notice how cool all of
Yeah.
the stuff is. And maybe that's the X factor that really put it over the edge. I think I'll have to see more before it's a definite buy for
Yeah.
me. But this could be like their God of War 2018 moment. Like this is the moment where
You care.
I care. I didn't care until this point. The hard didn't care, and I'm now all in. Like this could have been the turning point.
An interesting side note about that trailer. It ends with Dante on a motorcycle, and it's like total Advent Children vibes. It's just like I love Advent Children.
If Gary Busey was playing Cloud Strife,
Yeah, and it's just yeah, it was just fun. Like the final line of that trailer is Dante going, "Oh yeah," It's like the only other trailers that do that is like freaking Kojima trailers, and Norman Reedus doing that same thing.
Yeah.
Just gets you in the mood, man.
yeah. And Sekiro. The thing is like I'm way into whatever that is, but I didn't think the trailer, like I felt a little muted. I mean, this isn't
Yeah.
like our topic really,
Yeah.
but just like between you and me, like I kind of felt like it didn't sell it as hard as it could.
Like I love those games. I love Miyazaki's games. Man, like I part of it maybe is that we're plebs. We haven't seen the behind closed doors demos that they did. We've read the impressions, of course, but it's like, man, what they showed me, what they showed somebody who cares about their games, and I mean, maybe I'm just a little offended that are we not a big enough YouTube presence that we aren't invited behind your closed doors?
Oh yeah,
all
come
right,
on, fly us out.
come on, Miyazaki,
come on, Activision.
don't you know us, dude?
But I mean, I think we talked about this. It felt like an Activision cut.
It really did.
It felt
I mean,
like Activision
cut the trailer, edited the trailer.
cut the for Microsoft show, and I think they cut it like they cut Call of Duty trailers.
Yeah, and it felt a little bit less artistic, I guess, or a little bit less passionate.
But I mean, I always get that impression about freaking Call of Duty trailers. Like
Yeah.
everything Activision touches feels a little too corporate. But the thing is everything, taken individually, each one of those scenes, everything that's happening in the game outside of the cut, just taken on its own, it's like, oh, exciting, 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 and somehow they put it together and made it boring and corporate.
Yeah, and obviously that's speculation if Activision edited or not. But like when we were watching it that first time, I was almost, I was like kind of like what I don't want to say cringing because I know people hate that. And it's not a cringe-worthy trailer at all. It's like it's perfectly fine and it shows the game and it gets people excited. But there was just it was missing that spark. It was missing that thing that that made me believe in it.
Right. There's something like previously, there's like a weird quirkiness to those games that's hard to quantify that we didn't see. But I'm sure it's there. And like I haven't missed a Miyazaki game since Demon Souls. So I'm all in.
Yeah.
Like I want to be more jazzed than I currently am based on that one single trailer.
A game that we haven't even brought up when we were planning on what we were going to talk about in this podcast is Control, Remedy's new game.
Oh, yeah.
Which was announced at Sony's, and I think looks pretty cool, actually. As someone who isn't a Remedy fan, to see this game very distinctly looks like a Remedy game.
Oh, when we were watching it live, I'm like, oh, Remedy game. Like, right away, like I'm...
It looked exactly like Quantum Break, and it's sort of...
like color palette, art direction.
Yeah. Gunplay.
But that was another one of those highlights from Sony show. Despite the fact that it was sandwiched between these other huge mega first party heavy hitters, like that it stood solid.
Yeah, I think that's really impressive that, it's a new IP. Um, it's, uh, it's, and it's like what they showed. It wasn't a lot of different environments. It wasn't a lot of different characters. It wasn't. Um, it was sort of a simple trailer and simple. Um, I don't want to say simple trailer. I mean, it's like going through sort of a continuous area, and I'm sure that the whole game is in that area.
But
But
yeah,
it
it's like
still looked interesting.
kind of like if an office building met Inception,
Yeah.
where like the building is morphing around you as you're walking through it, and it looked cool.
And I mean, the stuff that got me more excited on like Control is the things afterwards, like them using, that they describing it as like a Metroidvania game, and some of those impressions of people saying, no, this is really special. This is a really special game.
Yeah, and I mean before Remedy games, it kind of too linear for my liking. Like I don't like to walk through corridors and shoot things, but to just feel out an area and just like live in it. That's exciting.
And then, I mean, of course, Cyberpunk 2077 being formally announced. Well, I mean, it was. Yeah, I don't know how you want to describe it. The game reveal,
Yeah, the first
in-engine footage.
right. I thought it looked good. You were worried at first, and I'm not trying to bag on you, but like you were, and I think, and made me worried that narrator in the trailer was your main character. It's like, and Jacob's like, "Do we play this douche?"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh no."
So, for those who don't know, the trailer, it's sort of evocative of like things like Blade Runner, but it instantly sort of differentiates itself in its aesthetic by showing you daytime first. It's this.
Like a very bright Southern California.
A way to I think to describe it is like, how like Fallout games are this future of the 50s,
Right.
where it's like kind of 50s tech
I
brought
know
to its
where you're
natural
going.
future.
Yeah.
Like Cyberpunk 27 is kind of like
The-
like 80s tech brought to its future.
Yeah, and especially and had Miami Vice vibes with the palm trees and the neon lights
Yeah. And I think it does take place in Southern California though too. I think.
Yeah, I mean Miami is in
I know,
Florida,
but I was
just
that's
so
a
nobody
slight correction.
just so nobody thinks that we confuse Florida with California. But you're absolutely right, and yeah, it had a nice flavor. But the only concern was like, wait, is this guy this narrating
okay,
guy?
yeah, because there's a narrator who's, I don't know, 20 something,
It's like
who's just like,
it's
kind of like if like the character from Scalebound, like that kind of.
try hard
And like the collar on his jacket is like some sort of futuristic metallic thing, but it's like up beyond his head in height, and it's like 80s stuff, that like pop collars.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's like a stupid pop collar that looks really dumb, and like this character who's like, whoa, we're going from Geralt, one of the coolest, most stoic characters in all of
Geralt,
medium,
effortlessly cool, to this try hard dweeb.
Yeah, turns out that isn't your main character, and seemingly like not a character. He's probably a character in the game, but
And maybe in context that monologue means something more, but outside of context, and we never played the tabletop game that it's based on, so maybe that would ring true with those folks. But I mean, it was immediately worrying, but like I thought it looked good. The impressions have been glowing.
Yeah, and I mean like it's that trailer was selling the world. It was selling the city where you're gonna be.
The world as a character.
Yeah, for sure, and it puts that first and foremost. I think it was kind of a mistake, or at least I don't really like that they only showed the gameplay behind closed doors, because I feel like I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. When like people, you're listening to all these podcasts and internet forums, and they're talking about Cyberpunk, and they're so excited because they've seen this game being played, and they see what this game really is and what it feels like to be in that world. And I just kind of feel like, I don't want to say like bitter. It's not like a jealousy thing as much as it's just kind of like, you haven't proven it to me. And I know, like we were talking about, really, CD Projekt Red doesn't need to prove themselves to me in the last podcast we did. But
Right.
kind of like after seeing that announcement trailer, it was like, all right, buds, like you kind of do need to prove yourself. Like you can't just strut out here and think that this one trailer is enough to, win game of the show kind of thing.
And the thing is like, I just know from experience, my tastes don't align with those previewers behind closed door. Like my tastes don't align close enough for those previews to mean anything. And the things is like, I remember the first, or like all the first Witcher trailers were like, I knew nothing about that universe. I knew nothing about the property or characters or anything. Got me in immediately. Whereas Cyberpunk 2077 is like, oh, that looks really cool, and I bet that's going to be great. But I mean, I'm still, man. They have my money. I just like nitpicky. I feel a little nitpicky. Like they're not with Sekiro. Like I mean, going in like. Shadows Die Twice and Cyberpunk, I think you and I thought were gonna be like, you can't see it, but I'm like way up here,
Yeah, I did not have any fears about those games, and like coming out of E3, I sort of have the most hesitation with those two games. And I think it's just a problem where they didn't show me enough. They showed the journalists there at E3 enough. They did not show me enough.
Right.
Because some of the things that they showed me were like a little bit like, oh, this isn't what I expected. And I wanted a little bit more in these areas that you're not giving me. And
it does remind me, remember on, it was E3 2014 when they first showed Bloodborne. And like it had leaked before as Project Beast. But when that first E3, they had just shown that CG trailer that didn't show anything, and they behind closed doors showed the media what the game was, and we just had to sort of guess. And I remember being kind of similarly let down.
yeah.
So I mean, it's happened before, and like, man, Bloodborne I adored to death. So perfect. Morty.
So I guess we can move on to our next.
Oh
takeaway.
yeah, we're doing a list.
Let's see. Do we want to talk about how, Square Enix was underwhelming?
Oh, that was really weird. Because, okay, I don't remember specifically what we said on the last podcast, but one of our major predictions was that, oh, holy crap, Square Enix is back in making an E3 press conference. They're coming back because they have a lot to show. They're going to impress.
They're going to show things even if they aren't ready to show.
Right. And no, it's just kind of a...
It ended up being kind of a Nintendo Direct style video. It was pretty short. They focused on Tomb Raider and Just Cause 4 and Kingdom Hearts 3.
Right. There was Dragon Quest 11 in there,
Yeah.
but it was mostly just things that were shown at other press conferences or things that we knew were already coming, like known quantities, and like the two things we didn't know about didn't really show us enough to.
And you're referring, I'm sure, to Babylon's Fall,
Which
is developed by Platinum.
That other
The Quiet Man.
By Human Head.
Yeah.
And that's interesting for personal reasons.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that.
But the things is, I liked it better than Nintendo.
Sure.
I'm just gonna say, it's
Yeah.
like anyone who thought that Nintendo's Direct was better than Square, don't. I don't know where you're coming from.
Don't at me, bro.
But no, it's like, but it was so sort of ho hum. Like, I mean, and going in it, like I had so high expectations. It was really short. It felt half baked.
Yeah, and I mean, like, maybe they made. I always want to like say maybe they made the right call because we aren't privy to all of the information that the people designing these press conferences have, and like if they're looking at it from no, we want to just focus on these 3 games or these couple games, and save. This is the year of Kingdom Hearts 3 marketing. Next year will be the year of Final Fantasy 7 remake marketing or whatever. Like maybe that's the call.
And that's probably the smart money. It's that you have Tomb Raider coming out, you have Dragon Quest 11, you have Kingdom Hearts 3 all coming out in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
It's
before next E3
before
those
next,
games, and Just Cause 4 will be out before next E3.
Right. Yeah, and all of those games is that they need marketing, and this is probably bang for your buck, the best place to market, your upcoming games. So I mean it was just sort of a long commercial instead of an exciting press conference of be excited about our brand again. Mm-hmm. Which I just want to be excited about Square Enix. I growing up, and this is long before Jacob was born. I loved those 2 companies. I lived and breathed those 2 companies, and like I want to be excited as I was when I was a kid. Mm-hmm.
Take that survey.
I already did.
The Square Enix survey. Go take it.
Write Xenogears anytime they ask for a write-in.
Let's see here.
Did you take it?
Yeah, I took the survey this morning.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'll talk to you about it afterwards.
All right. Another takeaway. Big one. Bethesda Game Softworks' next 2 games are next gen.
Say Todd Howard, studio lead and director of all of those games.
As spoken by our leader, Todd Howard.
No, I'm
professional comedian now. And he comes out there, he's doing a stand-up routine. He's saying, tip your waiters, basically.
Oh,
with
yeah.
a little water bottle and taking sips.
I was surprised by how comfortable he seemed on stage. He's still kind of off-putting, I think, for me personally.
He's got that kind of awkwardness, a little bit of that awkwardness of like I don't know if it's awkwardness, but the smarm of like a nerd.
Okay, it's not awkwardness. I think a little bit of awkwardness would go a long way to making him seem more charming.
The Sean Murray effect.
He seems a little too smooth, a little too corporate, a little too smug.
I mean, I think he just seems like that friend in elementary school who always was, had to correct you on everything. I don't know. Maybe I didn't have friends in elementary school, so I can only like refer to movies.
Okay, don't look at me either. I didn't. It's like neither of us had friends. So
maybe. Wait a minute. Were we both that kid that was correcting everybody?
Only if anybody talked to us.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess why is this a takeaway, Joe? That their next 2 games are next gen.
Okay, well, the thing I suspected going in, I think we would agree that probably we suspect that Elder Scrolls 6 was next gen. Like, it's Todd Howard has been telegraphing for a while, but that game is way the hell off. But I was almost sure that this generation would end with Starfield. Mm-hmm. Their leaked game. The title's been around for forever. So we assumed it was going to be like a Skyrim situation, like late gen sort of thing. I wasn't expecting a next gen announcement, and for the only thing to be shown was a logo and a planet and a
chip
and a visualizer. Something happened and exploded. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, like Bethesda also at their conference showed or announced Doom Eternal, effectively Doom 2, which is also going to be a next gen game.
Right. And I mean, I think that's it. That was the first moment, because people had been talking about next gen for months now, and it didn't seem real. It didn't seem like, oh, come on. It still feels like this generation has just started heating up. But that press conference, Bethesda, like next gen felt imminent. Like it feels,
like it feels like by next E3. Bethesda will be showing Doom Eternal and Starfield, and like we're looking at next gen games.
Yeah, and I mean that's scary and exciting because generations start slow. They don't. But I mean, that's at the same time, like it kind of feels like we're seeing the best teams tap out the hardware as it stands.
I
So
mean, I would prefer at this point to have like some of these studios be making games for close to launch at next gen instead of what happened this past generation where everybody's kind of sitting around laughing about how PS4 and Xbox One are going to fall on their face and phones are the future and whatever. And so like everyone, all of these developers are a couple years behind when,
right. So
you don't get into the meat of like the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One generation until 2015.
right. But I mean, the thing is I'm also in love with the idea of you just buy the, for cross-gen games, for this transition, it's like, with the hardware, ideally being like another x86 sort of architecture, you buy the PlayStation 4 version, and that is also the PlayStation 5 version.
Yeah, it's sort of like what the PS4 Pro does now in a way, where you don't buy PS4 Pro discs and PS4 discs. You just buy the PS4 disc and you pop it in your Pro, and it runs at a higher res.
I mean, and I don't know, wishful thinking, but anyway, but that's not even what we're talking about. Yeah, but Elder Scrolls 6, holy crap.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like it's probably going to take place in sort of the High Rock, Hammerfell area. If you're familiar with the Elder Scrolls lore, and I mean, like, I used to be super familiar with the lore and know, all of the different countries and really hope to see different areas. And I mean, I've fallen off a little bit.
I mean, it's been a
Just
long
been
time
so
since
long.
a new Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
Oh, I keep forgetting that Elder Scrolls Blades is coming out this year.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I guess that kind of goes into our first takeaway of third parties and game announcements, and like this little mobile Elder Scrolls game actually turning into something that we're interested in.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than Fallout 76. Oh, but I mean, that's not okay. But yeah, it's that next gen. Bethesda's next. Sorry, like I'm keep leading you off script here, or not script, but
No, Joe, this is all scripted. I have like a 500-page script here, all printed, and Joe just keeps he didn't memorize all the lines.
and it says that in the script right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that was surprising. I didn't expect anybody to say anything about next gen, but Microsoft had mentioned next gen in their press
Yeah,
conference.
Project
Scarlet.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
like,
I only think means they changed their brand, their color branding from green to red.
yeah, I mean,
I
cool.
mean-
But I think like what this Bethesda announces to their two next games are next gen. Like ultimately, why that's exciting, why that's a takeaway, is this greater conversation of next gen. We're getting the whisperings this E3, meaning that probably next E3 we're going to see next gen games. And I mean, like, is Project Scarlet going to be out next fall? Is Bethesda like working Starfield to be a Project Scarlet
Launch exclusive.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if Microsoft was like trying to recreate the success of the 360 launch and like get out way ahead of Sony,
Yeah, cut the legs off of their current system.
I mean, that's kind of what Sony did a little bit with like at least its lead up to launch with PS4, where they kind of caught Microsoft with their pants down. They were saying, no, we're not really thinking about next gen, and then bam,
But
January, here we are, boom,
But
and
they
then
didn't
here's the
cut.
console.
But Sony didn't cut off the legs with the software. The software kept coming out. In fact, major PlayStation 3 releases kept.
No, but they cut out the legs with getting the conversation started. They were there first.
Right.
We're announcing our next gen console first, and we're going to be selling the message, sending what this is first.
And I think it's valuable to be like really maneuverable, really agile in that corporate space. Yeah, and I bet with Bethesda and Microsoft's history, I bet that wouldn't be surprising.
So, Joe, let's get into a new takeaway. And this is one that everybody has to talk about. It's one of these that, just the to do, and it's that Sony tried something weird, ... and it didn't work with their press conference. And I'm, of course, referring to the horribly long 15-minute break after The Last of Us 2 gameplay demo, and going to, like, Sid Schumann on a panel of guests and just, like, stalling for time while they moved a room full of people over to another room.
And they did not tell, they didn't tell the audience, the streaming audience, what the hell was happening. And Jacob and I and my wife were sitting around watching it, and I felt I was personally offended, but I felt like I had to apologize to my wife. It's like, she's not usually into video games. It's like, she's like, oh, I'm going to watch it with you guys. It's like, oh no, it's like, I'm so sorry that this has happened. Like, and I felt personally like, oh no, it's like I've sat somebody down who doesn't normally like video games, and now they're watching 15 minutes of Sid Schumann, like, ramble.
And it was just super, like, I get what they're trying, they were trying to have. I mean, immediately we were concerned, because the conference starts out and they're, like, in a really small venue.
And it looks like a yurt.
Yeah, and, like, Sean Layden's like, we're in a church, and it's like, why though, dude?
And he keeps making church jokes. It's like, oh, well, you don't have to go to church on Sunday now. Like, and why do you keep?
Yeah, and it was like
and praise be to what? It's like,
what's going on, man? Like, this is so weird. It's like, will a couch reveal itself?
And that's the thing.
Is a couch right now?
And, like, we're very gun shy after PSX and the couches. It's like, we thought, it's like, oh, there's no way the couches are coming back. And then we were very concerned.
Yeah, and it was like,
and then immediately relieved.
Okay, so it's like,
and then it's
a moment that everybody was like, oh, when they first showed The Last of Us 2, it, like, Naughty Dog and Sony Entertainment, and then it loads up, and then you see Ellie.
Ellie is in, like, a digital recreation of the venue. And it's like, oh.
That moment when everybody around the world watching this goes, oh, I get it now.
And it probably works really well when you're in the room.
But it wasn't worth, like, okay, whatever that moment was that was cool, of, like, everyone going, oh, okay, I get it, was not worth the 15-minute break.
Okay, somebody at Sony thought it was.
And it just wasn't, though, dude.
And the thing is, it's like, in that 15 minutes between, okay, they're in that weird church tent thing, and then they move the live audience to the main stage. It is a 15-minute break where they cut away to a desk of talking heads yammering for 15 minutes, and it's going nowhere, and we're all very concerned. But reading afterwards to the people on the ground, it's like, oh, they're walking through some very nice Japanese gardens, like, that have been styled to get you in the mood for Ghosts of Tsushima, which is their next game on the main stage. It's like, oh, that would have been really cool to see. Couldn't you had a camera down there to, like, walk the trail with everybody, so that people aren't freaking out thinking?
I mean, it's just like a really weird. Yeah, they tried something. They tried. Hey. Try everything once except math, and
you know what? Go ahead.
No, don't. No. We do not condone math. Living in Montana, big math ads and stuff. Not for math, not ads for math. I've said too much. Anyway, the other thing that they tried that, like, kind of,
if you say meth 3 times, then the FBI is zeroed in on our podcast.
I thought you were going to say, like, if you say meth 3 times in a dark room, it appears in the mirror or something.
That's why everybody's using it.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think I know anybody. Oh, okay. Am I too sheltered?
Well, yeah, you live a sheltered life, Joe.
I do. For sure.
But they also, like, did something weird with like, they had little segues, kind of like little robot chicken things that Nintendo's done in their directs before. It's like segues between games, but made in Dreams. And this is
Dreams, the Media Molecule play, create, share style game.
And, like, the weird thing about that is, on this very podcast a couple years ago, we had suggested the same exact idea of doing dreams as little robot chicken skits in between, and I don't want to say why. I don't know if it didn't necessarily. It wasn't that it didn't work, but it wasn't that it really worked either.
It didn't seem like they'd gone. It was a half step because our main idea was that each of those dream skits would be tailored to what was going on in the conference.
Yeah, like you have like a little Norman Reedus Maiden Dreams dancing around to lead into Death Stranding.
But like it was just a bunch of weird non sequiturs.
Yeah, like a guy getting his hand slammed in a piano.
They had their charm, but it didn't seem to relate to anything in the conference itself.
But I think that's probably about enough talk of that little minuscule thing that nobody remembers or cares about.
And people were really bitching not about the what's the name of that composer for The Last of Us who would play the the banjo?
I don't know his name.
I think people were more into that, but the dude with the Japanese lute.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it's that he looked like he'd come from a Renaissance fair, but I'm assuming he's probably the composer at Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like, dude, it's like, if you want to dress up and play a Japanese lute, that doesn't offend me any.
Yeah, it didn't bother me. It was just, whatever. they tried something weird, and it didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, like, we could go on about, like, the stupid rock band thing that Bethesda did. Andrew WK coming out. And, like, it was fun. Like, so Bethesda's conference had, like, a weird...
Oh, and the giant man who was trying not to cry.
Yeah. I don't,
Okay.
Maybe he listens to this podcast, but...
Giant man, we love you. Don't
cry,
Giant.
He was very charming.
Don't cry, Giant man.
Yeah. Bethesda had some weird stuff too that didn't work. We don't need to get into it. We're beating a dead horse.
But I was going to say with the Sony thing, it's like I bet if you went through after the fact and you could cut a hell of a press conference out of all that footage.
I mean, the stuff that they brought killer.
Yeah.
It was...
But it was that one weird thing, that, like, giant blemish, like a pimple the size of the moon on your face, and
it's like, pop that thing, dude.
You look like Tyra Banks, but the giant pimple is really distracting, I don't know. I haven't seen Tyra Banks, and...
She still looks good.
She's a very attractive woman. My go-to attractive person.
Yeah, sure. All right, so let's get into our final takeaway here. And that is that Microsoft has acquired, 5 new studios?
I think it was 5, right?
4, and then they're making a new one, maybe?
Oh, is that right? This in Santa Monica, right? The Microsoft Santa Monica studio.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments below.
No, but I think because people were making the joke is that, Sony wants its own Santa Monica studio.
Microsoft.
Or Microsoft wants its own Sony Santa Monica.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and I think this is actually a big takeaway. We're not typically Microsoft fans, and I think that can really be rooted at. I mean, you can say Microsoft is a company, sure, whatever, but it ultimately comes down to that Microsoft first-party games aren't games that we care about.
Because they're lowest common denominator, and they're built that way. Like that's that's not even disparaging. Is that they're made to be lowest common denominator, and that's just not where our headspace is at. That's and like it's. But like I'm excited by the idea with these acquisitions, at least, is that Ninja Theory's been floundering for a while, and like they had the critical financial
darling. A Hellblade last year.
And it's like, yes, you guys, it's like you're doing it finally. And with Microsoft money, it's like, okay, it's like, hopefully Microsoft is nurturing that creative spirit that Ninja Theory has had for decade plus, it's like for them to really flower. And that's exciting. It's like, I'm excited for Microsoft to not be the lowest common denominator company.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for them to be publicly saying, hey, we want a Horizon. We want a God of War 2018. And, like to feel like, oh, you guys actually do. You guys are serious about this, and you are putting the money into funding things that will hopefully turn out as successful and as good and as artistic and great
As your competitors.
as your competition. And it's I think that's personally really exciting to see. And I mean, with the only sort of like, this is an announcement now. We won't see the fruits of their labor.
Not only till next gen, but like
years.
years into next gen, if these acquisitions have just occurred, as they seem to have done. And like, I've just got to ask, it's like Phil Spencer's been saying the same, and like obviously he's finally like pushed the ships around, wrote the checks, and they finally cleared just now. But he's been talking this game for years about how Microsoft is going to step up its game. It's going to compete. It's really going to compete with Sony. And just now, he's announced that there's the potential for things to happen. And it's like,
I mean, the hard part is like, not only do games take years to develop, these like negotiations and acquisitions and buying different things takes years to like
corporate cultures meshing or clashing.
Yeah, it's just like all of it takes years. So you can say like, well, yeah, for the past like few years,
prototyping, cancellations, cancellations, Microsoft. Cancellations, crazy delays. There's a lot that can go. Is just if they announced a bunch of games that were away early, it's like, oh, that's really risky. This is one step more removed from announcing games way too early.
I don't think that that's necessarily true, because, like, I feel like when you announce a game too early, it's up in the air. There's the concern that this isn't going to turn out how it looks now. I think this is more exciting. It's you're buying a spot and on the Monopoly board. This is
kinetic
you're doing
potential is huge,
and like I don't think there's a lot of fear or risk with this. There's not like that kind of, oh no, is this game not ever going to come out? Is it going to be canceled? It's like Microsoft owns these now. Like,
right.
They're going to be put to work on something, and like unlike something like, I don't think it's going to be necessarily another Lionhead shutdown or Fable Legends cancel, kind of like that, because
Scalebound canceled.
The Scalebound is a different situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they don't own Platinum.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's actually pretty exciting for Microsoft, and who knows? I mean, maybe next generation we go, oh, like, we're Microsoft fans.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this could be the turning point, and we just don't know it but we won't know it for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, yeah. It's a moment that stood out to me for sure, for good or ill. I think probably for good in the long run.
For sure.
It's like, but how good? That's up for debate. Because I mean, I think that's okay. You have these like up and coming companies, these indie studios, or pretty big indie studios that kind of have their own quirk. Will Microsoft scrub that quirk clean? And I think the testbed will, when you see the first games come out, will they have that, that X factor?
And I mean, I don't think we even specified what studios necessarily, other than Ninja Theory. It's also the
Playground Games.
So the people who made State of Decay 2, the people who are making We Happy Few, Ninja Theory, and
the new Santa Monica studio.
So
is that 5?
Oh, 4.
What's
Was there? Oh, the people who made Contrast.
Oh, that's
no,
right.
that's We Happy Few people. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Isn't
shoot, maybe it is just 4.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. Yeah.
We should have done our research more. Anyway, like,
it's all in the script.
Yeah. It's also that you all leave more comments below.
But I mean, I think that's the good or ill I mentioned before. Is like, okay, if these come out and they're just another, feel like bargain binny sort of AAA game that Microsoft is prone to churn out, that's a bad thing. is you took all of these weirdo studios and you made them nothing instead of fostering their weirdness, which is like I think I think the one thing you can say that Sony does right, because they fall on their face all the goddamn time in every other facet, is that they foster weirdness. Sony fosters weirdness. Microsoft scrubs it clean, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think, not to just beat a dead horse, I do think that there should be a little bit of hesitation in Microsoft saying, we want our own Horizon, we want our own God of War. Because to get to that point, I feel like you need to be saying, we want our own Concrete Genie. We want our own Lost Legacy. We want our own Knack.
The Last Guardian.
The Last Guardian. These smaller games that sort of show Sony's willingness to just try weird things. Like, I think, like, when Microsoft shows us that, hey, we're willing just to, like, fund, like, some weird little thing that's not going to sell.
Yeah.
And might even, like, review poorly. Like, I think, and obviously they help a lot of indie games out and, like, help with Cuphead, and
right.
so they're doing their thing.
But I mean, it's like Microsoft always jumps in on the indie bandwagon after it's already sort of like an indie darling, like already after it's a known quantity.
I don't know if that's like, I think you can find examples of that, sure, but I'm sure you can find examples on the flip side. Even like with Cuphead, it's not like that was from some well-established indie developer.
But actually, maybe I'm completely remembering this wrong, but for some reason I remember Cuphead being like an indie showcase, and everybody,
I don't know. I thought it was always shown at Microsoft stage.
No, and this is before it was shown on any stage. It was at an indie meetup, and then everybody was all over it.
I don't know. I'm sure you can find examples both ways, though.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but it seemed I remember that happening.
When in doubt, give them the clout.
I'm not sure that's sound advice. Don't do math and don't give clout.
All right. So that's our top 5 takeaways from E3 2018. And we may do another podcast in the near future about some of our thoughts on things like The Last of Us Part 2, which we didn't really get into, or Death Stranding.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, each one of those big games, I think we could ramble for half an hour.
Sure, yeah. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Carriage Play podcast. And as always, stay cheesy.